You walk past snowdrifts every winter and you never think twice about them. But if you ever find yourself in a certain nameless valley out past the eastern foothills, and you drop to your knees and press your ear to the ice, you will feel it. The ground is still warm. I am telling you this because the men who put a gun to my head to keep me quiet are all in the dirt now, and I need you to understand why I still pray for the cold. Let me tell you what we dug up in 1943. When the temperature drops below -20 degrees Celsius, the world just stops making sound. The snow swallows everything. Your breath freezes to your collar, builds up this thick crust of ice right against your throat. You stop feeling your toes first, then your fingers, and if you are out there long enough, you stop feeling the war entirely. You just feel the cold. It becomes a physical thing, an enemy. Honestly, it was more efficient than any artillery barrage I ever faced. I was a sergeant in the Red Army back then. Winter of 1943. I was leading a vanguard recon squad through this heavily forested valley somewhere in the eastern foothills. If you go digging through the official Soviet archives now, the ones they finally unsealed decades later, you will find a file on us. Heavily redacted, of course. It will tell you my squad was wiped out in a partisan ambush. It will tell you the valley was marked as a lethal minefield and permanently cordoned off by state security. But official records are just the lies a government agrees to tell. I am telling you this now because the regime that ordered me to forget what I saw has crumbled to dust. I am the last man left who knows exactly what was buried under that snow. And I can tell you right now, we were not ambushed. There are no landmines in that valley. We were officially tasked with hunting down a retreating SS detachment. But listen to me. You do not weld a heavy steel bunker shut from the outside to stop an advancing army. You do that because you have created something inside that you are absolutely terrified might get out. You have to understand the condition we were in. The Red Army was pushing the Axis forces westward, slow and ruthless. The enemy was burning every village, poisoning every well, destroying every bridge as they fell back. But this specific valley, it was untouched, pristine, silent, choked with snow that reached our waists. We were exhausted to the point of delirium. Every step meant lifting your leg high out of the drift, planting it, and dragging your starving body forward. My squad had been whittled down by frostbite, dysentery, and shrapnel to just a handful of hollow-eyed men. We had our radio operator and scout, a young kid we called Sokol, Falcon. He was barely 20, but he had eyes that could spot a sniper hide in the tree line from a mile away. Then there was Krot, our sapper and heavy weapons guy. His call sign meant Mole, mostly because he preferred the company of trenches and high explosives over actual human conversation. And then there was Lieutenant Borisov. Borisov was an attached political officer. His winter uniform was thicker than ours. His boots were better lined. His hands were always warm. He did not care about the cold, and he certainly did not care about us. He was a rigid, ambitious man who only cared about securing state secrets and finding something that would earn him a commendation back in Moscow. In the field, a man like Borisov is infinitely more dangerous than an enemy machine gun nest. You can flank a machine gun. You can call in mortars on a sniper. But you cannot flank a political officer who can have you executed for treason right there in the snow just by writing your name in his little black notebook. We had seen him do it to a conscript who fell asleep on watch 2 weeks prior. We hated him, but we feared the state more, so we followed his orders. We had been tracking the heavy treads of a German mechanized column for 3 days. Sizable force, at least a company strength, dragging heavy equipment. But then, right at the mouth of this valley, the tracks just stopped. They did not fade away. They were not covered by fresh snow. They abruptly ended. Like an entire motorized detachment had simply evaporated into the freezing air. It made absolutely no tactical sense. Sokol had been monitoring the radio pack all morning, freezing his hands off trying to adjust the dials, hoping to pick up any unencrypted German chatter. Nothing. Just the endless, hissing static of the winter storms. Before we pushed into the valley, we made contact with a small band of local partisans hiding in the surrounding hills. Desperate, starving people. They usually knew every inch of those woods. But when I pointed to this valley on my map, the partisan commander, an old man missing half his teeth, just shook his head, refused to even look at the paper. He told me it was a dead zone. Said the Germans had set up some kind of quarantine camp in the hillside months ago. Built a specialized spur line off the main railway tracks, leading deep into the woods. The old man said supply trains would roll in late at night, heavily guarded, cargo cars covered in thick tarpaulins. But the trains never rolled out empty. He looked at me with a fear I will never forget, and said that whatever was in those covered cattle cars, it did not sound like machinery, and it did not sound like soldiers. He said in the dead of night, you could hear things thrashing against the wood. Heavy. Frantic. The locals believed it was a chemical weapons dump, or a quarantine site for some horrific strain of typhus. They stayed far away. I noted the intelligence, assumed it was exaggerated local superstition, and ordered the squad to advance. I should have listened to the old man. God, I should have listened. We were trudging through a particularly dense section of pine forest, fighting a blinding whiteout, when Sokol suddenly threw up a hand. The squad instantly dropped to one knee, rifles raised, scanning the tree line through the howling wind. I crawled up through the snow to his position. He was not pointing at a bunker, or a tank, or an enemy patrol. He was pointing at a massive, unnatural-looking snowdrift, banked against the side of a steep, rocky hill. Protruding from the very top of the drift was a thick, rusted iron pipe. Looked like a heavy industrial ventilation shaft. And it was breathing. In the dead of a Russian winter, where spit freezes before it hits the ground, this rusted pipe was exhaling a steady, thick, pulsing plume of vapor into the sub-zero air. I slung my rifle, pulled off my heavy woolen glove, and carefully held my bare hand near the edge of the vapor cloud. It was undeniably hot. The heat was shocking against my frozen skin. And the smell, it was entirely wrong. It was not the harsh chemical smell of a diesel generator exhaust. It was not the sharp, smoky scent of a wood-burning stove. It smelled like a sanitized hospital ward, mixed with the stagnant rot of a summer swamp. Heavy formaldehyde, iodine, damp earth, decaying vegetation. I signaled Krot to move up, and we began a rapid tactical assessment of the perimeter. If there is an active ventilation shaft, there is a subterranean structure beneath us. If there is heat pouring out, there is a massive power source operating down there. And if there is power, there are people. I turned to Lieutenant Borisov and gave him my assessment. I recommended we mark the coordinates, fall back to a safe distance, and radio command to call in a heavy artillery strike. Standard tactical doctrine for encountering an unknown fortified enemy installation is to destroy it from a distance. You do not risk a recon squad clearing a bunker complex blind. But Borisov's eyes lit up. He did not see a tactical threat. He saw a pristine, intact enemy research facility. He saw blueprints, experimental technology, classified intelligence. He ordered us to start digging. I tried to object, cited the exhaustion of the men, the exposed nature of our position, but Borisov simply cut me off, his hand resting casually on the flap of his pistol holster. So, we dug. It took us over 2 agonizing hours. The snow was packed so hard by the wind, it was like chipping away at solid concrete. We used our small entrenching tools, muscles screaming, sweating profusely beneath our heavy winter coats despite the lethal cold. We hit packed ice, then frozen dirt, and finally, the sharp ring of metal echoed through the woods. We cleared away a massive section of the hillside, revealing an imposing set of heavy, reinforced steel blast doors set deep into a thick concrete bulkhead. Pressure-sealed doors, the kind you would expect protecting a coastal artillery battery or a submarine pen, completely out of place in a simple forest outpost. Krot stepped forward to examine the locking mechanisms. He ran his gloved hands over the heavy iron wheel in the center of the right door, brushing away the frost. He stopped, stepped back, tilted his head. Then he pulled out his combat knife to scrape at the seam where the 2 massive doors met. He called me over, his voice tight, unnaturally quiet. He pointed the tip of his knife at the locking wheel, and then dragged it down the entire length of the vertical seam. The wheel was completely fused to the door, and running down the entire seam were thick, ugly, hurried lines of bubbled metal slag. Someone had taken a heavy industrial arc welder and completely sealed the doors shut. I stared at those welds, my mind racing. When you build a bunker, you put the locks and deadbolts on the inside, so the people occupying it can secure themselves against an outside threat. But these doors were not locked from the inside. They were welded shut from the outside. The German unit we had been tracking had not vanished. They had stood out here in the freezing cold, exposing themselves to the elements and the advancing Red Army, desperately welding their own heavily fortified bunker shut before fleeing into the woods. Krot looked at me, and I saw the exact same cold realization in his eyes that was settling into my gut. The retreating SS detachment did not want to keep the Red Army out. They wanted to keep whatever was down there in. They were terrified of it. They wanted it permanently buried. They wanted it to freeze. I turned to Borisov. I explained exactly what we were looking at, kept my voice level, stripped away any emotion. I told him that an army in full retreat does not waste precious hours and welding gas sealing an empty bunker. They only do this to quarantine something they know cannot be killed with conventional weapons. I told him opening those doors was a direct violation of basic survival, and I formally refused the order to breach. Borisov unholstered his Tokarev pistol. He did not point it directly at my chest, not immediately. He held it down by his side, thumb resting on the hammer. He spoke in that flat, dead voice of a true political fanatic. Told me refusing to secure an active enemy intelligence site was an act of cowardice and sabotage. Told me if I did not order Krot to breach those doors right that second, he would shoot me for treason, promote Private Sokol to squad leader, and have him do it instead. I looked at my men. Sokol was pale, shivering, rifle clutched tight. Krot was staring at the ground, jaw clenched. They were freezing, starving, exhausted, caught in an impossible trap between a welded tomb and a political officer's bullet. If Borisov shot me, he would force them to open it anyway. I had to keep them alive. I made the only choice a commander can make. I slowly nodded to Krot. Krot did not say a word. He unslung his pack and pulled out a heavy thermite charge. We all stepped back, taking cover behind a ridge of hard-packed snow, aiming our weapons at the steel bulkhead. Krot set the charge against the thickest part of the slag line, pulled the igniter, and sprinted back. The thermite ignited with a blinding magnesium white glare that violently cut through the gloomy gray whiteout. It burned at over 4,000 degrees, hissing and spitting as it ate through the heavy steel slag. The sharp, acrid smell of burning iron filled the freezing air. It took a full minute for the charge to burn out, leaving a glowing molten scar down the center of the blast doors. Krot moved in immediately with a heavy steel pry bar, wedged the flattened end deep into the weakened seam. Sokol and I ran up, added our weight. We strained against it, boots slipping on the ice. For a moment, the doors held fast. Then, with a sickening, echoing screech of tortured metal, the heavy hinges broke their frozen seal. The massive steel doors groaned, shifted, and finally swung inward into the darkness. We immediately stepped back, dropping to one knee, rifles raised into the pitch-black corridor. Expecting the worst. Expecting the rapid chatter of an MG-42. Expecting starving German holdouts. At the very least, expecting the freezing, stagnant air of an abandoned tomb. We got none of that. As the heavy doors swung fully open, we were hit by a violent, physical wall of air. Sweltering. The heat rolled over us in a heavy, suffocating wave, instantly fogging our optic lenses and melting the frost off our eyelashes. It was the oppressive, humid heat of a tropical hothouse, pouring out of the earth and colliding with the sub-zero Russian winter. And riding on that wave was the overwhelming stench of damp soil, surgical chemicals, and the unmistakable sound of something massive and very much alive, shifting in the dark below. We froze. Every muscle locked tight. My finger rested heavy against the trigger. We held our breath. The sound we had just heard, that heavy wet shifting, did not repeat. Just the steady hiss of humid air pushing past us into the blizzard. It could have been the doors settling. Could have been a pressure change. In war, you learn to pray for the mundane explanations, even as your instincts scream at you to prepare for the worst. I kept my weapon shouldered, but I could not see a damn thing. The collision of sweltering heat and -20-degree air created an instant, thick fog. Worse, the humidity condensed on the freezing metal of our weapons. The glass lenses frosted over completely. I reached up with a trembling hand, wiped the moisture from my face, feeling the ice on my eyelashes melt into warm, stinging sweat. I signaled the squad to hold. Needed a moment for our equipment to acclimate. As we crouched there, the physical toll hit us. We were dressed for a lethal blizzard. Heavy wool greatcoats, thick felt boots, layers of coarse tunics. Within 3 minutes of standing in that doorway, we were suffocating. The heat was oppressive. Felt like standing inside the belly of a rotting animal. I ordered the men to strip off their outermost winter gear. Massive tactical risk. If we had to retreat suddenly, we would freeze to death in minutes. But if we tried to clear an unknown fortification, wearing 50 pounds of heavy wool in what felt like 30°C heat, we would collapse from heat stroke. We dropped our greatcoats and gloves in a pile by the blast doors. Standing there in sweat-soaked tunics, cold air at our backs and sweltering dark in front, I felt incredibly exposed. I took the point. Motioned for Krot on my right, Sokol covering rear, Borisov lingering safely in the center. We swept our flashlight beams across the gloom. The corridor was wide, utilitarian, heavily reinforced. Thick poured concrete walls weeping with condensation. Heavy iron pipes wrapped in insulation running along the ceiling. Over-engineered German precision. As we pushed deeper, the smell intensified. Sharp chemical bite of iodine and bleach, layered over something deeply organic and wrong. Like a field hospital built at the bottom of a stagnant swamp. About 50 meters in, the corridor opened into a staging area with 3 separate heavy steel doors. Above each were stenciled German words. Sokol stepped forward, shining his light on the peeling paint. He pointed to the left door. Krankenstation, he whispered. Infirmary. Medical ward. He pointed to the heavy double doors at the far end. Sicherheitsbereich. Security area. Restricted access. Then the door on our immediate right, standing slightly ajar. Maschinenraum. Engine room. Generator. I nodded to Krot. If we were going to clear this, we needed light. We stacked up on the engine room door. Krot nudged it open with his rifle barrel. The room was massive. A cavernous sub-basement filled with looming, silent shapes of heavy machinery. We stepped inside, boots splashing in puddles of warm, foul-smelling water on the concrete floor. Krot moved toward the center, scanning gauges and pipes. He ran a hand along a thick, heavily insulated pipe, plunging directly into the floor. I asked him what we were looking at. Krot was a man of few words, but when it came to engineering, he was a savant. He looked back at me, face pale in the flashlight beam. Said it was a hybrid system. They did not just drag a diesel generator down here. They tapped into the bedrock. The valley sits on a fault line. There is a geothermal vent deep underneath. The Germans drilled down into it, using superheated steam from the earth to drive the turbines, supplementing with diesel to keep output stable. He wiped grime off a massive pressure gauge, told me that was why the ventilation pipe outside was blowing hot steam, why the bunker was sweltering. The earth itself was heating the place. Closed loop system. As long as the earth stays hot, the facility has power and heat. The realization settled over me like a physical weight. You do not build a complex geothermal power grid in a remote forest just to house infantry. You build it because you need absolute, uninterrupted power for something critical. Something that cannot be allowed to fail. Borisov demanded we turn the lights on. He was not looking at the machinery with dread. He was looking at it with greed, already calculating commendations. Krot traced the power cables to a massive breaker panel, checked fuel lines, pressure valves, grabbed the heavy rubber-coated handle, looked at me. I gave a curt nod. He threw the breaker. The response was immediate. Deep within the earth, something massive groaned. A heavy rhythmic thumping echoed up through our boots as the turbines caught and spun. The hissing of steam grew into an industrial roar. Along the ceiling, rows of caged fluorescent tubes flickered violently, buzzing like angry hornets, before snapping into a harsh, blinding white light. The sudden illumination was almost worse than the dark. In the dark, your mind plays tricks. In the light, the reality is absolute. We filed out, back into the staging area. The corridor was fully lit now, a sterile tunnel of gray concrete stretching ahead. We moved toward the heavy double doors marked security. Unlocked. I pushed them open, and we stepped into the heart of the bunker. It was a sprawling, multi-level central laboratory. The scale was staggering, easily the size of a train depot, supported by thick concrete pillars. White ceramic tiles on the floor, stained with mud, spilled chemicals, scattered paperwork. A scene of frantic evacuation. Filing cabinets pulled open, surgical trays overturned, scattering scalpels and bone saws. But it was not the debris that commanded our attention. It was the tanks. Lining the center of the hall, arranged in perfect, terrifyingly neat rows, were dozens of heavy, reinforced glass cylinders. Massive. Each one easily 8 feet tall, 3 feet wide, capped with heavy brass fittings bolted into the concrete. Thick bundles of cables and tubes ran from the ceiling into the caps. Every single cylinder was completely frosted over, coated in thick, opaque white ice. Impossible to see inside. I signaled the squad to fan out, weapons trained on the rows. As I walked down the center aisle, boots crunching on broken glass, my tactical mind began to scream. Something was fundamentally wrong with the design. I looked up. Mounted on the ceiling above each cylinder was a heavy, motorized steel blast shutter, currently retracted, but the plating and locking gears were obvious. I stopped and stared. You put blast shutters on the outside of a bunker to protect people from artillery. You do not put heavy steel blast shutters on a medical observation tank, unless you are terrified that whatever is inside is going to break the glass and come out after you. Sokol called out from the far end. I moved to his position. He was standing in front of a frosted cylinder, pointing to a small brass plaque riveted to the base, stamped with German typography. I asked what it said, kept my voice low. Sokol squinted, said it was a designation, Subject 27. Below that, a date of intake, October 12th, 1943. But he hesitated, traced his finger over the brass, said there was a space for a time of death. It was blank. All the ones he checked, time of death was blank. Because they are not dead, Borisov's voice echoed across the hall. We turned. The lieutenant was standing near a massive control console at the far end, staring at iron levers and temperature dials. His eyes were wide, practically glowing. He announced it was a preservation facility, a biological weapons cache. Said they froze whatever they were developing to preserve it before evacuation. Ordered me to get Krot on the console. Wanted the temperature controls engaged. Said we were going to thaw the tanks. I felt the blood drain from my face. Closed the distance in 3 strides. Did not care about his rank. I told him, with all due respect, that was a suicidal order. Told him to look around. Look at the blast shutters, the heavy restraints on the surgical tables. The Germans welded the front doors from the outside. They did not do that to protect a stockpile. They did it to bury a mistake. If we thaw those tanks, we release whatever they were desperate to leave behind. Borisov looked at me with a cold, dead expression. Slowly unfastened his holster flap again. He told me my lack of vision was a detriment to the Soviet state. Asked if I thought Moscow cared about the risks. Said we needed photographs, tissue samples. Needed to know what the enemy engineered. Said if I refused, he would execute me for cowardice right there. And write that I died weeping in the snow. I looked into his eyes and saw absolutely nothing human. A machine fueled by ideology. No reasoning with him. If I died, Krot and Sokol would be left to his mercy. Dead by morning. I swallowed the bitter taste in my throat. Turned to Krot. Told him to find the heating coils. Do it. Krot stared at me for a long second. He knew exactly what I was doing. Nodded slowly. Slung his rifle. Moved to the console. Studied the German dials. Traced the lines connecting geothermal feeds to the tanks. Grasped a heavy iron wheel. Began to turn it. A deep, shuddering groan echoed through the plumbing. Pipes above hissed, expanding as superheated water and steam were diverted into the base of the glass cylinders. We backed away, forming a tight semicircle, weapons raised. For the first few minutes, nothing. The frost remained stubborn, but the sweltering heat in the room rapidly increased. Air so thick it felt like breathing underwater. Sweat poured down our faces. Then, the frost began to weep. Small droplets formed on the glass, cutting wet tracks through the ice. Tracks widened. Frost sloughed off in heavy sheets, splashing onto the tiles. The opaque barriers dissolved into translucent slush. Through the melting ice, dark silhouettes emerged. Suspensed in the center, floating in thick, amber-colored fluid that smelled of ammonia and old blood. As the last frost melted, the harsh light penetrated the glass. I felt my stomach heave. Beside me, Sokol let out a sharp, choked gasp, stumbling backward. They were human. Or at least, They had been. German soldiers. I could see tattered, rotting remains of field-gray trousers clinging to their legs, dull glint of aluminum dog tags embedded deep in their chests, but the flesh, it was no longer human. Hardened, calloused, deeply gray, like the bark of a dead tree. Looked like all the soft tissue had been chemically burned away or replaced by something denser. But the true horror was what was woven into them. Thick, fibrous, root-like growths. A sickly pale yellow fungus pulsing beneath the gray skin. Roots erupted from joints, spines, base of skulls, wrapping around limbs like suffocating vines. They did not just cover them. They were integrated. Pierced veins, replacing the vascular system with a deep earth parasite. The thickest roots extended from their backs, anchoring them to the metal intake valves at the bottom, feeding them, sustaining them in suspended, agonizing preservation. My mind desperately tried to rationalize it. Told myself it was treatment for frostbite, chemical weapon exposure. But the truth was staring at me. The Germans had not been trying to cure anything. They were trying to conquer the Russian winter. Found an ancient parasite that thrived in absolute zero. A fungus that survived by replacing soft tissue with dense, frost-proof organic matter. Tried to weaponize it. Engineer soldiers who did not need coats, who did not feel cold, who could march through a blizzard without a pulse. And they created this, a room full of agonizing, mutated failures. Sokol whispered, voice trembling, told me to look at their faces. I did not want to, but my eyes were drawn upward. The parasite had ravaged their skulls, eyes pushed out of sockets by expanding roots, jaws dislocated, hanging open in silent screams, mouths choked with yellow fibers, statues carved from rotting wood and dead flesh, entirely, unequivocally dead. Borisov murmured, fascinating, stepped closer, notebook out, pencil scratching, called it biological resilience, integration of foreign matter, ordered Sokol to get his clipboard, log serial numbers and descriptions. Sokol looked at me, eyes wide with a silent plea. I wanted to tell him to run, wanted to tell Krot to wire the console with explosives, but Borisov's pistol was still in his hand. I gave Sokol a slow, heavy nod. Sokol swallowed hard, pulled a notebook and pencil. Hands shaking so violently he dropped the pencil twice. Took a hesitant step toward the nearest cylinder. Subject 27. Particularly mangled. Lower jaw missing, torn away by parasite expansion. Chest split open, ribcage interwoven with pulsing yellow roots. Sokol stepped up to the glass. Heat intense. Fresh condensation forming. He reached out with a bare, trembling hand, wiped the condensation to read the numbers. As his hand smeared the water away, the creature inside shifted. Not a trick of light, not fluid settling. The heavy, gray bark-like head slowly tilted forward. Roots in its neck stretched and snapped. Sokol froze, hand pressed flat against the glass. Inside, inches from his face, Subject 27 opened a milky, bloodshot eye, pupil blown wide, darting erratically before locking onto Sokol. Chest heaved, a violent, bubbling spasm. Slowly, fighting the liquid and the roots, it raised its arm. Hand a hardened, webbed mass of gray flesh and yellow fibers, brought it forward. Dull, heavy thud against the glass, right where Sokol's fingers rested. It was looking right at him, alive. Sokol screamed, raw, primal shriek. Scrambled backward, boots slipping on wet tiles, crashing hard onto his back. Clipboard flew, clattering across the floor, scattering Borisov's reports into puddles. I did not think. Reacted. submachine gun up, seated in shoulder. Sighted center mass of the glass. Finger on trigger. Crot mirrored me instantly. Inside the fluid, Subject 27 did not thrash. Kept its hand pressed against the glass. Milky eye staring blankly out. Roots pulsed with a slow rhythm, matching the turbines below. Alive, but moving with the terrifying lethargy of an insect trapped in sap. Borisov's voice cracked like a whip. Hold your fire. He was not looking with terror, looking with unhinged wonder. Stepped over Sokol, walked right up to the glass, stared into the milky eye, called the biological stasis flawless, said the foreign matter integrated with the central nervous system, preserved cellular structure against absolute zero. I kept my weapon raised, heart hammering, heat unbearable. Told him that thing was not a miracle. It was a hostile combatant. Active. Said we needed to shut down the coils immediately. If the glass broke, Borisov snapped back. Said the glass was 3 inches of reinforced industrial silica, designed to withstand a grenade, would hold a single degraded specimen. Called it the holy grail of Axis bioengineering. Said it meant a soldier that does not freeze. A vanguard for the Siberian winter. Crot muttered from across the aisle. Said it looked like a corpse that did not know it was dead yet. Borisov turned, face flushing red. Leveled his pistol at Crot's chest. Told him to speak when spoken to. Told me to lower my weapon. Said the thaw continues. We would bring ambient temperature to room standard. Document the revival process. I looked at Borisov. At the Tokarev pointed at my sapper. At the rows of melting tanks. Ice sloughing off fast. Dozens of dark silhouettes emerging. Faint, sluggish movements. Hands twitching, heads tilting. The laboratory was waking up. If I shot Borisov, mutiny. Crot and I might survive, but state security would hunt us down. If I let him continue, whatever was trapped would get out. I needed to de-escalate. Buy time. I carefully lowered my barrel. Kept eyes locked on his. Told him he was in command of intelligence, but I was in command of physical security. If we stay for a full thaw, I cannot have men standing in the open with unsecured flanks. Said there were lower sublevels. Stairwells on the way in. If stragglers or researchers were hiding down there, they could ambush us. Borisov narrowed eyes. Pistol wavering. He was a fanatic, but not immune to military logic. Knew an unsecured perimeter was a death sentence. I said I wanted to take Sokol and clear the lower levels. Secure the sub-basement. Ensure no hostile elements. Crot would remain with him, provide overwatch on cylinders. Once secure, we assist with documentation. Borisov considered it. Looked at the melting tanks. Realized the volume of work. Slowly lowered the Tokarev. Did not holster it. Said very well. Gave me 20 minutes. If not back, assume desertion. Report us as enemies of the state. Told me to take the boy. Said he was useless anyway. I did not wait. Grabbed Sokol by the shoulder strap. Hauled him up. Kid shaking violently. Face color of ash. Shoved his rifle into his hands. Pushed him toward the heavy steel doors marked medical ward. Gave Crot a single, hard look. He nodded. Understood. Keep the political officer busy. If tanks break, shoot Borisov first and run. Sokol and I pushed through the doors, leaving the sweltering lab behind. Stepped into a narrow, dimly lit stairwell. Air slightly cooler. Sokol whispered, voice cracking. Asked if I saw its face. What was inside its mouth? I told him I saw it. Told him to breathe. Keep weapon up. We clear the sector, then find a way to destroy the generator without Borisov noticing. We descended, boots echoing sharply. At the bottom, stairwell opened into a long, dark corridor lined with examination rooms. The true medical ward. Preliminary work before moving subjects upstairs. Signs of panicked evacuation everywhere. Doors thrown open. Heavy steel surgical tables bolted down, but thick leather restraints snapped or torn away. Tiles scored with deep, frantic scratch marks, like something dragged kicking and screaming down the hall. Walls splattered with old, dried blood, black in the flashlight beam. But the smell bothered me most. Heavy, rotting scent of the pale yellow fungus. Overpowering. Coated ceiling corners like sickly spiderwebs. We moved tactically. Cleared room by room. Abandoned equipment. Shattered vials. Remnants of desperate surgeries. At the very end, hallway dead ended into a massive, heavily reinforced steel door. Different from the blast doors. Thick. Insulated. Covered in white frost just beginning to melt. Stenciled across the center in faded black paint. Coolraum. Sokol translated. Cold room. Deep freeze storage locker. Voice trembling. I stepped up. Examined the lock. Secured from the outside. Heavy industrial steel padlock looped through the primary latch, barring anyone from opening it from inside. I muttered that they locked it. Asked why a retreating army would padlock an empty freezer in a subterranean bunker. Sokol whispered maybe it was not empty. Maybe another one of those things. I considered it. If another mutated subject, dormant in cold. But if heat continued to rise, freezer would thaw. Whatever inside would wake up. I needed to know. Pressed ear against freezing steel. Held breath. Faintly, masked by turbine hum, I heard a sound. Rhythmic. Desperate. Rattling. Sounded like teeth chattering violently. Stepped back. Raised submachine gun. Pressed muzzle against padlock. Signaled Sokol to cover. Squeezed trigger. Sharp crack of the round in the confined corridor. Deafening. Padlock shattered. Ruined metal dropped. Kicked latch up. Yanked door open. Stepped back. Weapon up. Blast of bitterly cold air rolled out. Hit us like a wall. Inside was a stark contrast to sweltering heat above. Standard industrial meat locker. Walls lined with cooling coils encased in thick white ice. Huddled in far corner, wedged between empty steel shelves, was a pile of thick gray wool blankets. Shaking violently. I barked in Russian. Step away from wall. Show hands. Sights leveled. Blankets stopped shaking. Slowly a figure emerged. Not a monster. Not a mutated soldier. A man. Incredibly thin. Face gaunt. Hollowed by starvation and cold. Lips dark bruised blue. Hands trembling uncontrollably as he raised them. Wearing tattered, filthy remains of a German medical officer's uniform. Insignia marked him as a captain. Looked at us with eyes shattered by terror. Did not fear the Red Army. Feared the devil coming to collect him. He rasped bitty. Please, do not shoot. Voice dry, broken. Kept weapon leveled. Motioned Sokol to secure him. Sokol stepped forward, kicked blankets away, patted him down. Clean. No sidearm. Sokol said he was a doctor. Freezing to death. Voice regaining strength. I ordered him out. Sokol grabbed him by collar, hauled him into warmer corridor. Temperature shift hit hard. Collapsed onto tiles, coughing violently, body racked with shivers. Stood over him, weapon ready. Asked if he spoke Russian. Officer looked up, blue lips trembling. Nodded slowly. Whispered a little. Learned for prisoners. To give instructions. Heavily accented. I said good. Crouched to eye level. Told him he was going to give me instructions. Tell me exactly what this facility is. What is in those glass cylinders upstairs? Why his command locked him in a freezer to die. German squeezed eyes shut. Tear leaked out. Cut line through grime. Opened eyes. Sheer depth of horror made my blood run cold. Whispered they locked him inside because he tried to stop the thaw. Said his commanding officer realized war was lost. Red Army closing in. Wanted to destroy facility. But the SS, the Ananurbi researchers refused. Said project too valuable. Said if they could not control subjects, leave them behind for us. A trap. Biological minefield. I demanded what project. Pressed barrel lightly against shoulder. Asked what they did to those men. Officer let out ragged, sobbing breath. Said Project Wintergewex. Winter growth. Born of desperation. Lost so many men to cold during push toward Moscow. Frostbite. Gangrene. Killed more than artillery. High command demanded medical solution. Way to make human body immune to freezing. Pointed trembling finger toward floor. Said when engineers dug foundations. Tapped geothermal vents. Found something else in deep soil. Ancient parasitic fungus. Thrived in absolute cold of permafrost. Fed on warmth of earth. Scientists saw miracle. Isolated spores. Injected directly into spinal columns of wounded soldiers. Sokol let out disgusted noise. Stepped back. Asked if they experimented on their own wounded. German looked down at hands. Face twisted in shame. Said they were told it would save them. Told fungus acted as biological antifreeze. At first, it worked. Parasite consumed soft tissue, fat, vulnerable organs, replaced with dense fibrous organic matter, kept vital systems functioning at 30 below zero. Subjects did not need coats. Fires. Could not suffer frostbite because flesh no longer human. I thought back to bark like gray skin. Yellow roots anchoring to metal. Asked if it just replaced flesh. Grim reality clicking. Said it took them over. Doctor nodded frantically. Eyes wide. Said yes. That is the horror. Fungus requires living hosts to process nutrients. Hijacked central nervous systems. Paralyzed motor functions while roots expanded. Kept brains completely active. Not dead. In agonizing, waking hibernation. Feel every inch hollowed out. Replaced. Cannot scream. Cannot move. As long as temperature remains absolute zero. Parasite dormant. Hosts trapped in frozen hell. I said bunker is sweltering. Geothermal generator running full capacity. Heat pouring into lab. Cold knot of dread in stomach. Doctor's eyes snapped to mine. Terror escalating to panic. Reached out. Grabbed sleeve of sweat-soaked tunic. Gasped you turned heat on? Engaged turbines? Voice frantic. I said political officer ordered tanks thawed. Wants to secure specimens. German screamed you have to stop him. Scrambled backward against wall. Pushing away from ceiling vents. Said we do not understand rules of organism. Cold keeps it dormant. Heat acts as extreme biological catalyst. Grabbed his own hair. breathing, hyperventilating. Said when researchers tried to thaw first test subjects. Heat caused parasite to enter hyperexpansion. Grows violently. Shatters host bones from inside out to make room. Unimaginable agony drives brain into blind homicidal frenzy. Impervious to pain because already experiencing maximum suffering. Will destroy anything generating heat. Tear you apart to stop warmth. I stared at him. Pieces locking together. Blast shutters inside tanks. Snapped leather restraints. Doors welded from outside. Retreating SS did not weld doors to keep us out. Shut down generator. Plunged bunker into freezing temps to force dormancy. Welded doors to ensure frozen, sealed tomb. Buried mistake alive in ice. And Borisov ordered heat back on. Looked at Sokol. Face mask of terror. Knew exactly what was happening above. Doctor whispered. Eyes locked on sweat dripping from my brow. Slowly raised trembling finger. Pointed at heavy iron ventilation grate in ceiling above. Steady hiss of warm air through vents had stopped. Silence heavier than blizzard cold. Thick. Expectant. Proceeds artillery. Then, echoing through ductwork from lab above, came a sound I will hear in nightmares until I die. Deep, resonant groan of thick industrial silica glass straining under immense pressure, followed by sharp, violent crack, like rifle shot in canyon. Then heavy, collective sound of shattering glass cascading through ceiling, followed immediately by wet, heavy thud of something massive hitting tiles. Thaw was complete. Dust and pulverized concrete drifted down like dirty snow. Sound of shattering glass, ringing in ears. But silence immediately following paralyzed us. 3 agonizing seconds. Nothing. No alarms. No shouting. No gunfire. Just heavy thud of turbines. Hissing steam. Then screaming started. Not human. Wet, tearing, guttural roar vibrating in teeth. Vocal cords frozen for months, forced to push air through throats choked with roots. Not one voice. Chorus of agony echoing down stairwell. I breathed Krot. Name barely passed lips. Sapper up there alone with fanatic and room full of shattered tanks. Before I could move, heavy boom of Krot's rifle ripped through bunker. Concussive blast shook dust from fixtures. Worked bolt. Second shot thundered. Followed by frantic barking of Borisov's pistol. Roared move. Grabbed Sokol, shoved toward stairwell. Told him keep spacing, check corners. Did not bother translating for doctor. Grabbed collar, hauled to feet. Dead weight. Eyes rolled back. Consumed by terror. Shoved ahead. Used barrel to prod toward steps. Hit bottom of stairwell. Thick, viscous liquid cascaded down steps like waterfall of dirty oil. Amber preservation fluid. Smelled of ammonia, rotting meat, sickly sweet fungus. Fluid hot to touch. Steaming on cooler concrete. Boots slipped in muck fighting way up. Gunfire growing louder. Yelled cover door to Sokol at landing. Pressed flat against wall beside security doors. Chaos on other side. Sharp cracks of rifle. Frantic yelling. Beneath it, heavy wet sound of things dragging across tiles. Took breath. Tasted formaldehyde. Kicked right door open. Stepped into nightmare. Sweltering lab transformed into slaughterhouse. Every cylinder blown outward. Floor treacherous lake of amber fluid. Shattered silica. Scattered equipment. Thick clouds of steam rising from superheated pipes. Visibility severely limited. Through haze, saw Krot. Falling back toward control console. Precise tactical bounds. Plant feet. Raise rifle. Fire devastating round into steam. Cycle bolt. 3 steps back. Tracked line of fire. Saw them. Subjects violently expanding. Dr. Wright. Sudden heat acted as massive catalyst. Watched dark silhouette pull from wreckage. German soldier. Or gray husk of one. Body contorting in ways anatomy should not allow. Pale yellow roots growing at visible rate. Heard sharp cracks of bones breaking inside out to accommodate mass. Jaw unhinged with wet tear. Mandible splitting as roots erupted from throat. No eyes. Sockets pushed out, replaced by hardened weeping nodules. Completely blind, not aimless. Driven by agony of rapid mutation. Heat causing excruciating pain. Lashing out at anything generating warmth. One creature, massive shape dragging torn tubes, lunged toward fluorescent lights on pillar. Swung club-like arm. Shattered bulbs and sparks. Desperately trying to extinguish heat. Crot bellowed sergeant over din. Fired another round. Heavy bullet struck subject square in chest. Watched impact. Moment understanding of combat shattered. Standard round hits human body. Distinct reaction. Flesh tears. Shock ripples. Target drops. But round struck creature. Sounded like hammer hitting petrified tree. Chunk of gray bark like skin splintered. Revealed dense woven layer of yellow roots. Creature stumbled from kinetic force. Dark viscous sap oozing from crater. Did not fall. No shock. No bleed out. Righted itself. Wet rattling hiss. Continued dragging toward gunfire. Screamed standard rounds ineffective to Sokol. Raised submachine gun. Seated stock. Told him aim for joints. Take out mobility. Break legs. Opened fire. Drum magazine spat relentless stream into swarming mass. Muzzle flashes illuminated steam like strobes. Walked fire across knees and hips. Air filled with splinters of gray flesh and roots. Tactic worked marginally. Concentrated fire severed fibrous connections. 2 collapsed. But horror was refusal to die. Without legs, dug hardened hands into tiles. Dragged upper bodies forward. Through fluid and glass. Leaving thick sap trails. Relentless. Mindless engines of suffering. Yelled where is Borisov to Krot, dumping empty drum, slamming fresh one. Krot pointed toward elevated console. Steam thick there. Billowing from pipes. Through haze, saw political officer. Standing on raised metal platform. Frantically shoving documents, logbooks, samples into canvas satchel. Completely surrounded. Heat radiating from console intense. Acting like beacon. Half-dozen mutated subjects swarming base. Gray root choked hands grasping blindly at railings. Roared lieutenant. Leave intel. Fall back. Fired short burst into back of creature trying to pull up stairs. Borisov ignored me. Blinded by ambition. Saw ultimate weapon. Prize for legacy. Not leaving without proof. Fired Tokarev blindly downward. Small rounds chipping hardened flesh. Doing nothing. Screamed motherland demands intelligence. Voice cracking with terror and manic pride. Grabbed brass-bound ledger. Shoved in bag. Ordered cover extraction. Turned to run downstairs. Waited too long. Creature lying dormant in shadows beneath platform lunged upward. Arm elongated. Twisted mass of fused bone and roots. Wrapped hardened hand around Borisov's ankle. Sickening crunch. Lieutenant shrieked. Legs flew out. Hit metal grating hard. Pistol clattered into swarm below. Screamed Vasily, shoot it. Clawing at grating. trying to drag away. Creature did not let go. Began to pull. Mechanical strength terrifying. Dragged Borisov downstairs. Boots bouncing violently. Sprinted down center aisle. Splashing through hot fluid. Ignoring grasping hands. Raised gun. Tried for clean angle. Too many. Other subjects drawn by heat of struggling body. Frantic movement. Swarmed over him. Did not bite or tear. Pressed sweltering mutating bodies against him. Roots expanding. Lashing blindly in pain. Heavy fibrous tendrils whipped around him. Entangling limbs. Crushing beneath collective weight. Borisov's voice no longer command. High, desperate, human plea. Fanaticism stripped. Raw terror. Reached hand up through mass. Fingers grasping steam-filled air. Shrieked, "Shoot me." Voice bubbling with blood as weight collapsed ribcage. Begged for love of God. Stopped. 20 meters away. Clear line of sight to extended hand. Gap in swarming bodies showed collar of tunic. In career, made decisions costing lives. Ordered men to hold impossible positions. Left wounded in snow. Never asked to execute own officer. Looked at Krot covering flank. Face grim mask. Looked at Sokol by doors. Sobbing. Rifle shaking. Looked at German doctor cowering against wall. Hands over ears. Whispering frantic prayer. Borisov was monster. Would have executed me without thought. Reason we trapped. But no man deserved pulled apart into parasitic nightmare. Raised submachine gun. Did not aim for creatures. Aimed for small patch of tunic visible through mass. Took breath. Held it. Squeezed trigger. Short controlled burst of 3 rounds. Recoil pushed shoulder. Saw fabric jerk violently. Hand reaching desperately went limp. Dropped into sea of gray flesh. Lowered weapon. Hands trembling violently. Barely keeping grip. Done. Roared fall back. Command tearing throat. Everyone to staging area. Swarm consumed heat of body. Turned blind horrific faces toward us. Drawn by heat of sweat. Breath. Hot metal of weapons. Began dragging down aisle. Slow unstoppable wave. Grabbed Krot by shoulder. Pulled from firing stance. Sprinted back to doors. Boots slipping on bloody tiles. Burst through threshold. Nearly trampled Sokol and doctor. Ordered shut doors. Lock them. Krot and I threw weight against steel. Slammed shut. Krot through iron locking bar. Secured latch. Leaned against cold steel. Gasping. Sweltering heat of staging area felt cool compared to lab hell. Relief short-lived. Heavy thud of bodies slamming other side, echoed. Not coordinated assault. Mindless frantic thrashing. Through dense wood like bodies against metal. Steel groaned. Sokol stammered they cannot break through. Blast door. Designed to hold. Krot said it will hold. But we trapped. Only way out back up main tunnel, past generator, out front doors. I said that is what we do. Grab winter gear at entrance. Walk into blizzard. Cold kill us eventually. Rather freeze than burn alive. Turn toward corridor to engine room. Deep rhythmic thumping of turbines changed pitch. Steady hum to high agonizing whine. Iron pipes rattled violently against mounts. Floor vibrated with terrifying uncontrolled frequency. Asked Krot what happening to power grid. Krot stared down corridor toward half-open engine room door. Lights flickering wildly. Buzzing sharp electrical anger. Explained system closed loop. When Borisov ordered thaw, Opened primary valves diverting steam to tanks. Tanks shattered now. Steam, lines open. Venting into lab. Pressure and geothermal well dropping. Turbines spinning out of control, compensating for loss of resistance. Snapped in Russian. What does it mean? Krot said generator redlining. Face pale. Going to overload. Tear itself apart. Massive deafening metallic screech echoed from engine room, followed by concussive boom of pressure valve blowing. Thick cloud blinding scalding white steam erupted from doorway. Filled staging area in seconds. German doctor screamed. Dropped to knees. Covered head. Heat of raw steam blistering. Burning exposed skin. Lights died. Not slow fade. Tubes popped in unison. Plunged bunker into absolute impenetrable blackness. Darkness so complete, heavy, felt like physical weight pressing eyes. Reached frantically for flashlight on webbing. Trembling sweat-slick fingers fumbled switch. Clicked forward. Nothing. Heat and humidity shorted battery. Slapped palm. Desperate for sliver of light. Yelled Sokol, light. Heard frantic clicking. Followed by curse. Said dead. Moisture ruined it. Entirely blind. Trapped in sweltering dark. Scalding steam. Room full of mutated anomalies battering steel doors behind. Ordered stay together. Hand on man in front. Krot take point. Hand on left wall. Follow past engine room. Straight up tunnel to blast doors. Felt trembling hand grab back of tunic. Sokol. Reached out. Grabbed Krot's webbing. Reached down. Blindly grasped in dark until found collar of doctor. Hauled to feet. Commanded move. Slow agonizing shuffle through pitch black. Heat unbearable. Steam searing lungs. Boots splashing blindly in hot water. Every shadow threat. Every groan footstep. Reached engine room doorway. Heat radiating like open oven. Heard turbines grinding to halt. Gears whining as cooled and warped. Pushed past. Left hands pressed to weeping concrete. Navigating by touch. Slope angled upward. Main tunnel. Entrance 50 meters away. If reach doors, grab coats, push through snow, disappear into blizzard. Bunker not letting go. Behind us, echoing from staging area. Sound froze blood. Heavy metallic screech. Tortured steel giving way. Locking bar buckled under relentless crushing weight. Doors burst open. Resounding crash shook tunnel. Silence replaced by wet, heavy dragging of dozens of bodies pulling across concrete. Thick, fibrous roots scraping walls. In tunnel with us. Moving faster and dark. Without blinding glare. Senses heightened. Sensitivity to heat and vibration. Stopped. Heard closing distance. Wet dragging echoing off curved ceiling. Impossible to tell how close. Volume told too many to fight. Sokol whispered they broke through. Voice terrified squeak. Said right behind us. Unslung gun. Gripped cold barrel. One drum left. Krot maybe 10 rounds. Not enough to stop swarm that did not care about holes in chests. Said keep moving. Voice barely audible. Do not stop. Do not fire unless they touch you. Picked up pace. Desperate blind scramble up slope. Hand scraped raw on rough wall. Air growing cooler. Sweltering heat, giving way to freezing draft from shattered doors. Close. Smelled ozone from thermite. Felt sharp biting edge of -20-degree wind cutting sweat-soaked tunic. Krot yelled from front. See snow. Faint grayish blue light at end of tunnel. Moonlight reflecting off blizzard. filtering through gap and blast doors. Most beautiful thing ever seen. Sprinted toward light. Wet dragging behind accelerated. Caught scent. Felt vibrations. Something massive lunged from dark. Did not see. Felt violent air displacement. Thick, hardened limb covered in roots slammed into German doctor running behind me. Doctor let out short, choked scream. Weight bore him to ground. Wet, tearing sound of roots expanding. Gripping uniform. Shrieked, "Help me." Voice raw. Spun around. Raised gun blindly. Heard thrashing. Heavy thud of boots kicking concrete. Wet, hissing breath of creature on top. Could not see. Fire in dark, confined space. Ricochets kill Sokol or Krot. Sokol yelled from doorway. Silhouette framed against pale light. Said, "Come on." Stood in pitch black. Freezing wind at back. Sweltering heat of horde closing from front. Doctor screaming. Voice fading as creature dragged back down tunnel. Away from light. Back into depths. Choice. Save man who helped create horror, or save squad. Heavy wet dragging closer. Swarming tunnel. Turned back on dark. Ran for light. Did not look back. Taught in basic training, fighting retreat requires organized bounding, covering fire, communication. Did none. Blind, desperate scramble up incline. Driven by primal terror. Air colder every step. Sweltering humidity clashing with bitter draft. Lungs burned with steam and freezing air. Heard Sokol's ragged, sobbing breaths ahead. Boots slapping wet concrete. Behind. Relentless wet dragging. Consumed doctor in seconds. Screams smothered. Replaced by expanding roots. Snapping bone. Not stopping to feed. Coming for heat of bodies. Pushing up corridor like wave of rotting wood. Grayish blue light brighter. Hit threshold. Heavy steel doors exactly as left. Preed open enough to slip sideways. Sokol hit gap first. Threw himself through. Tumbled into deep snow. Krot right behind. Heavy frame scraping jagged melted slag. Last in tunnel. Turned sideways to squeeze through. Risked single glance back. Tunnel choked with steam. Through swirling haze, saw them. Massive contorted gray silhouettes. Crawling over each other. Elongated root-choked limbs reaching blindly. Closest 10 meters away. Dragging on hardened webbed hands. Jawless face tilted upward. Tasting warmth of breath. Threw myself through gap. Tunic caught on metal shard. Tore as tumbled into freezing night. Physical shock of hitting. Minus 20-degree air. After sweating in hothouse agonizing. Like plunged into liquid nitrogen. Heavy sweat-soaking tunic instantly crystallized. Seconds. Wet clothes turned rigid, freezing armor biting skin. Thick steam pouring from gap hit freezing air. Turned dense localized fog. Obscuring tree line. Yelled coats. Voice cracking. Get gear on now. Scrambled through snowdrift. Tore into pile of greatcoats and boots discarded lifetime ago. Hands shaking violently. Barely managed wooden toggles. Shoved freezing fingers into wool gloves. Coarse fabric, like sandpaper on numb skin. Back in lethal grip of winter. First time welcomed cold. Wanted it to freeze earth. Freeze bunker. Kill parasite. Bunker not freezing. Geothermal generator deep below in catastrophic overload. Ground vibrating deep sickening frequency. Steam pouring from gap growing thicker, hotter. Heavy solid impact struck inside steel doors. Concrete bulkhead shuddered. Sokol whispered they at door. Rifle raised. Barrel trembling. Another impact. Then another. Not frantic battering. Trying to push through narrow gap. Thick gray arm encased in pale yellow roots thrust through opening. Hardened fingers grasping freezing air. Moment mutated flesh. Hit sub-zero wind. Roots visibly contracted. Amber sap weeping from joints. Cold hurting it. Forcing parasite toward dormancy. Extreme heat from overloaded generator driving forward. Agonizing biological tug of war. Response homicidal rage. Arm thrashed wildly. Struck edge of door like baseball bat hitting concrete. Krot said cannot just leave. Voice deadly calm. Staring at concrete archway framing doors. Said if generator blows, might collapse lower levels. Or blow doors wide open. If swarm gets into forest, find partisan camp, retreating columns, supply lines, heat of single campfire keeps active. Unleashing plague. Looked at me. Eyes hollow but resolved. Said must bury entrance. Bring hillside down. Looked at bulkhead. Steep rocky snow covered incline above. Krot right. Seal tunnel under thousands tons earth. Generator tear itself apart. Geothermal well flood. Facility plunge back to absolute zero. Parasite entombed forever. Asked how much explosive left. Raised gun. Aimed at thrashing arm. Krot replied 2 heavy anti-tank satchels. Unbuckling canvas bags. Enough shatter primary load-bearing arch. Must place perfectly inside threshold. Need structural weak points. Need time. Told him 2 minutes. Voice hardening. Sokol on me. Hold gap. Krot did not waste second. Grabbed satchels. Sprinted to doors. Crouched low beneath steam. Sokol and I flanked opening. Stench overpowering. Putrid wave of rot. Chemicals. Hot blood. Another subject forced head shoulders into gap. Crushing creature in front. Jawless face mass of writhing fibers. Milky eyes blown wide with pain. Reached out. Webbed hand hooked edge of door. Trying pry wider. Mechanical strength terrifying. Heard hinges groaning. Roared fire. Sokol and I opened simultaneously. Range less than 2 meters. Could not miss. Submachine gun dumped rounds into face and chest. Heavy bullets chipped bark like skin. Splinters of gray flesh and sap flew into snow. Sokol's rifle cracked. Heavy round took shoulder. Severed thick cluster of roots anchoring arm. Creature hissed. Wet rattling sound. Slumped forward. Wedged tightly in gap. Sokol yelled target down. Voice cracking. Shouted no. Barricade. Dead weight temporarily blocking. Saw mass behind surging. Tearing at corpse of own kind. Trying pull out way to get to heat of muzzle flashes. Krot working frantically inside lip of archway. Exposed to horde. Jamming satchel charges deep into stress fractures. Wiring friction igniters with det cord. Twisted root covered hand shot from dark. Grasping blindly. Wrapped around Krot's felt boot. Krot did not flinch. Drew combat knife fluid motion. Drove steel blade into center of hand. Pinned to frozen mud. Creature thrashed. Blade grating mutated bone. Krot ignored. Fingers flying over blasting caps. Yelled 30 seconds. Breath pluming. Horde surging against doors. Concrete vibrating. Not just generator. Combined force of dozens throwing dense bodies against metal. Hinges screeching. Melted slag cracking under pressure. Crot roared, charges set. Ripped knife free. Scrambled backward out threshold. Held wooden handle of igniter. Yelled clear perimeter. Grabbed Sokol by harness. Hauled backward. Plunged into waist-deep snow. Threw flat against frozen earth. Buried faces in arms. Opened mouths protect eardrums. Crot yanked cord. Doved into snow beside. Delay 3 seconds. Felt like hour. Heard wet tearing sounds, horde pushing dead subject from gap. Heard guttural rattling hisses, tasting freezing air. World ended. Explosion absolute. Not sharp crack. Deep earth-shattering boom physically lifted off ground. Massive shockwave displaced air. Pulverized concrete. Blinding snow ripped through tree line. Flattened pines. Threw backward. Deafening roar followed as structural integrity gave way. Thousands tons rock, frozen earth, snow violently collapsed inward. Slid down incline. Buried concrete bulkhead under massive impenetrable avalanche. Ground shook violently full minute as earth settled. Slowly, heavy suffocating silence of winter returned. Hissing steam gone. Frantic rattling gone. Deep thumping of generator muffled. Choked out as facility collapsed. Lay in snow long time. Buried in white dust and rock. Ears ringing high piercing whine. Nose bleeding freely. Warm blood instantly freezing to lip. Slowly pushed onto knees. Muscles screaming. Sight where doors been completely gone. Massive sheer wall collapsed earth and snow. Indistinguishable from mountain. Ventilation pipe buried. Nightmare sealed. Looked at Crot. Sitting up. Wiping dirt. Staring blankly at avalanche. Sokol curled tight ball. Arms wrapped knees. Weeping silently into coat. Survived. Exhausted. Starving. Freezing. Alone in hostile territory. Returning without political officer. Took 4 days march back to Soviet lines. Will not describe misery. Blur of frostbite, starvation, creeping paranoia, every snow-covered stump gray bark like face-watching. Did not speak. Nothing left to say. Stumbled into forward operating base near river crossing. Immediately segregated. Not medical tent. Not hot rations. Stripped weapons. Locked separate freezing concrete holding cells. Waited. Men who came interrogate did not wear standard infantry. Wore immaculate tailored greatcoats of SMERSH. Counterintelligence Directorate. Job find traitors. Spies. Uncomfortable truths. Bury them. Brought into stark, brightly lit room. Senior officer, cold dead eyes, sat across. Pristine file folder on table. Did not ask what happened. Told me, said Sergeant Vasily. Voice smooth, devoid emotion. Said squad encountered heavily armed partisan ambush. Nameless Valley Sector 4. Fought bravely. Overwhelmed. Lieutenant Borisov acting highest ideals sacrificed cover retreat. Body unrecoverable. Asked, is this correct? Sat staring at manicured hands. Thought sweltering heat. Thick yellow roots bursting chest. Sound of ribs collapsing begging shoot. Knew exactly happening. Already sent specialized recovery team. Seen collapsed hillside. Found scorch marks. Residual heat. Scattered documents so cold dropped. State knew what down there. No intention letting world know Axis achieved terrifying breakthrough. Or worse, no intention letting anyone know, because motherland might want dig up study themselves one day. Officer repeated, "Is this correct?" Tone dropped octave. Implication clear. Agree, lie. Or disappear, gulag above Arctic Circle. Cold take me just as surely as parasite. Looked dead in eye. Rasped, "Yes, comrade major." Voice broken glass. Said exactly happened. Lieutenant died hero. Kept isolated another month. Transferred different units, different fronts, ensure never spoke again. Never saw Sokol or Krot after. Heard rumor years later, war ended, Krot stepped bounding mine push into Berlin. Prefer believe quick. Sokol, do not know if mind ever recovered from melting glass. Served rest war. Did duty. Kept mouth shut. Survived. But never really leave place like that behind. War ended. Soviet Union collapsed. Archives opened. Historians pored over declassified documents, searching truth. Eastern Front. Look for squad patrol. Find exactly what officer told say. Heroic last stand. Valley marked lethal minefield. Permanently cordoned. But no truth. No greatest horrors wore not artillery shells or machine guns. Greatest horror, what men do each other, desperate enough try conquer nature itself. Old man now. Sit apartment. Watch snow fall street city. People complain cold. Wrap scarves tight. Hurry warm homes. Do not mind cold anymore. Pray for cold. Pray deep bitter biting frost freezes earth solid. Because no out there. Nameless heavily forested valley foothills Eastern Europe. Ground remains untouched. Modern logging companies, strictly forbidden drilling, digging, laying roads specific sector. Government claims unexploded ordnance. But those walked perimeter frozen ground. Locals remember old rumors. No real reason, do not linger valley. Say if walk deepest part woods, snow drifts high as man chest. Drop knees, put ear to snow. Earth beneath still warm.